to take a win in these games. It's time to move on, though. Unfortunately, Avalanche are going to be knocked out of the Vainglory 8 now officially, and it's going to be Salty Potatoes joining Calamity Reborn as our second team. And it's time to decide our third team, gentlemen. We have our final match of the day. It's going to be G2 Esports up against Team Queso. This is the most important game of the day for both of these teams. This is once again win or die. Whoever wins the series will move on to the Vainglory 8. G2 Esports, a lot of points on the line for them as well. If they don't make it, whoever is the highest will steal their points away from them.
Could steal the points. Whoever's highest, if they don't make it, does get the option of which spot they want to take.
I mean, why do you not take the points? There is no reason not to take the points.
Strength of schedule could factor into it, but
I guess.
But 8 points is a lot of points to be able to pick up versus the 3 or 0 that are available. But G2, obviously, if they keep their spot, regardless of where they end up seated, they retain their points and their spot in the Vainglory 8. So it's so important for them to be able to pick up this win.
Yeah, and their opponent's going to be Team Queso now. This is a team that has had an inconsistent showing across the course of the challenge battle so far, and this is going to be their final test. If they can finish off G2, they will make it into the challenge battles. It'll be all 3 challenger teams going forward, but these guys, they do seem like the weakest of the challenger teams based on their performance this weekend.
Absolutely, coming in here, they played well, had some performances a little messy across the board. Of course, Avalanche able to take a series off of them, but they do have the makings of a strong team, and this is really what it all comes down to. G2 has also not played as consistently, first day versus second day, but they've come in today and definitely improved a lot of things. Mechanically, their team fighting play, but more importantly, their drafts. They're going in giving themselves the best chance to win. That's super important in this series because Queso, also, looking to try to make sure they get the best chance. It can be sometimes a little unconventional in the draft, not always the right choice. So I think G2, they are favored to win, I think, across, at least from my point of view.
Well, we'll see if that's going to be the case. Now, the matchup I want you guys at home to be looking at for this one is going to be Dark Potato versus Dark Ghost. And not because they have similar usernames, in fact, because of their performances in the challenge battle so far. Obviously, these statistics taken only from the on-stream games in day 1. So this is not including the matches from earlier today. But Dark Potato yesterday was having quite a lackluster performance, whereas Dark Ghost on his Kestrel was looking amazing. Even in their losses, Dark Ghost still was managing to look like a star performer.
Yeah, I mean, it was a situation where they stepped up in a big way, both of them, at different times. Yep. So it's going to be, if they both are on their A game today, it's going to be a very, very interesting series.
It certainly is. Well, it's time to start to talk draft, gentlemen. How do we go into this series? If you're G2 against Queso or vice versa, what are the power picks? What are the pocket picks that you need to be focusing on in this draft and avoiding going into this?
Well, definitely on A side, G2 needs to make sure that they don't give away their strat. They don't first pick Vox unless the drafting and banning is a little different. And they did that in their last series. They took Lyra first, took the healer, and it was very successful. When they're on B side, they get a little bit more flexibility here when they get those next 2 picks in the ban. So I think G2 play like they draft and play like they played the last series. They should be absolutely fine in this. Queso, though, I really think they need to focus on the countering, right? If you kind of bait G2 into picking something like a Scarf or Celeste, and then there's plenty of counters for that. Definitely don't put yourself into the hole early by picking up like one of your carries right out of the gate and allowing that to be countered. This is going to be a very important part of the draft.
All right, what are your thoughts on this draft, Bacon? What are you anticipating seeing here?
Definitely expecting to see Blackfeather be a pretty big priority. Very similar to Sneaky, Mr. K-Cool is extremely well known for his Blackfeather play, and if he gets that hero, it swings a little bit in favor of Team Queso regardless of the rest of the draft. So I think that's going to be a big priority within the first picks and second set of bans. Blackfeather's very likely going to be taken off the board pretty consistently.
All right, so Blackfeather going to be a high priority for these 2 teams. And Blackfeather definitely a hero that's been high priority throughout the tournament and throughout the Vainglory 8 in the last few weeks. But as we look towards this one, is there something that we can say for Queso that gives them an edge in this series? Because it feels like G2 have sort of come into their own today. It felt like first game was warm-up, second game was a much more convincing game. For the side of Queso, what do you want to be looking at, like in terms of playstyle? What composition do you want to draft so that you can play well into G2? What is their weakness coming in?
It's really going to come into getting on top of Hodor and getting on top of the carry here, because this is going to be a game where they typically like to play something very conservative like a Vox, and you can bait them into that pick. And once you do, then you can definitely try to pick up a Black Feather unless it gets banned in the draft. So, you know, it's going to be about being the aggressors here, and we'll see through the draft if they pick up those carries and a support that can help initiate.
All right, well, Kestrel going to be the first ban. Not something we see all too often. Well, as a first ban, at least. It's something we've been seeing in just about every draft, though, and that's taken away from Dark Ghost. He was one of the guys to watch, and his comfort pick has been stolen.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an important pickup. The Grace does get through, and now are they going to look for the Baron? Baron into Grace is definitely a difficult matchup,
First
but
Baron of
there
the
it
day.
is.
Yeah, first time we'll see it today. We saw it have a lot of success yesterday. Well, going into Grace specifically is often hard for Baron.
It very much can be the Idris ban, obviously. When you have a Baron and your opponents have Grace, it just makes so much sense to ban away the Idris and not let that through. And actually, an interesting thing about this matchup that I had actually almost forgotten about. PRZ and Keanu Nakoa, opposite sides of the fold this time around, they used to be teammates back when Rising Lotus first started. They actually qualified for the then Evil 8 together on that lineup.
Who's role swapped then since then?
It was actually PRZ has always been the captain, and Keanu was a laner at the time.
Okay, and we've seen Keanu go into the jungle role this season as well. So Keanu, clearly a man of many talents. Lyra and Blackfeather going to be locked in. We mentioned how Blackfeather would be a huge focus, and that's going to be picked up by G2.
Yeah, and having the Lyra with the Baron as well is going to be really important. The Blackfeather is going to want to engage, and now that's a little bit of a barrier that will be put in front of the Baron. That's super important. You do have, of course, the healer split. I was a little surprised the Arden was the ban from G2 instead of the Lyra, because Lyra with the Baron is very effective. The Blackfeather, I think this might have been just something they want to take away from Team Queso, but I'm knowing how G2 likes to play, Blackfeather does kind of work well with their composition.
It works well with the Grace because you need someone who can dive in with a Grace, and it also works into the Baron because you need to be able to get onto that Baron as well. So I actually really like the Blackfeather pickup. The Arden ban, I agree with you though, that's just Europe putting a higher emphasis on Arden than they do on Lyra. I still don't know why, but you know, it is what it is.
All right, now looking towards this final pick for G2, you would hope it's going to be something kind of more ranged-based, because otherwise you could be playing into Rhyme just a little bit here. The composition so far was focused around Baron. Looks like the Jewel is going to come on through. Very heavy melee composition coming out from G2.
Ooh, this is a very interesting pickup, because now, if I'm decided Queso, I just pick up a Rhyme and go to town against a triple melee composition. It's kind of strange to me to see this Jewel pickup. Very likely will be the Crystal Blackfeather then in this case, but I mean, yeah, Queso, just go for the Rhyme. Assuming that they play the Rhyme, it would be such a strong pick into this composition.
Plus, G2 has to be very careful here, because the Lyra is going to be using the bulwark to block some of that engagement, and so they need to make sure they kind of bait that out. Once the bulwark's down, you can get onto the Baron. The Baron might rocket leap away, but then the Jewel can follow him right after. So I think that that's their key to victory here. G2 really has to make sure they're patient when going onto that Baron.
Well, Queso not obviously comfortable with that Rhyme. They want to go with this Samuel. Samuel, a very strong pick, very stable pick, and also very good at cleaving through melee compositions as well. So we'll see how that's going to work out for them. How are we feeling about the drafts? What are going to be the win conditions for these two teams?
The win condition for G2 is going to be much more difficult to execute because they have this triple melee composition against an AoE damage composition. So they're going to have to be able to try and get onto the same target without really grouping up. So they're going to have to take very unique and creative paths through the jungle when they go for the initial engages and try and catch targets off guard. Whereas members of Queso, they just have to play and burst their damage out and just, you know, assuming that when they get into melee, they're going to be grouped up. Baron's going to do a ton of damage. The Empowered Malice and Verdicts are going to do a ton of damage. So this is going to be a tough one for G2 just because of this draft that they have.
Yeah, so all about Queso kind of kiting back during these fights. Like, is there something G2 can do to stop that happening during the fights?
Well, they gotta fight early, and they gotta fight quickly, because there's a time on the Queso's roster where they're just going to become unbearable. They're going to be impossible to take down. The damage is going to come out from the Baron, the sustain from the Samuel, and that's never what you want to be. It's not like we have a meta where the early game is so overpowered that you can snowball this quickly. The composition they have is good earlier, but it's not going to necessarily completely take it away. So G2, yeah, they do have their backs against the wall. Obviously, mechanical play in the team fights, it's going to be more important here, so I'm going to just have to wait and see how it plays out.
All right, are we leaning either way here? Are we saying that Queso have kind of got an advantage in this draft? Do we feel like that is going to be significant moving on into the series?
I definitely think the Queso have a big advantage in this draft in particular. I don't know about significance on the series as a whole, because next draft is very likely going to be extremely different, but game number one, Queso definitely have an advantage.
Would you agree with that, Dragonborn?
Oh, absolutely. I think that this might be just one they have to look back at and learn from. We'll have to wait and see, though. I mean, the Grace is a huge game changer, and so when used correctly, they shouldn't have a problem. But the Lyra, not taking away the other healer, it really does allow, when they're in a tight spot, Queso's going to be able to disengage very easily.
Yeah, for sure. And we are just waiting for one of the players who's currently in the bathroom. Got to get it all out of your system. There's a lot of pressure on these players right now, in more ways than one, apparently. But this is an incredibly... that was a very crude joke. This is an incredibly high-pressure game for these two teams. Right now, they are both fighting for their spot in the Vainglory 8. Two challenger teams have already made it through. Team Queso going to be looking to make that a trio in this series, but G2 desperately trying to hold on to that spot. G2 is an organization with a lot of reputation, and you would imagine that the organization is putting quite a lot of pressure on these players to make sure that they keep their professional league spot.
And they were one of the very first multi-esport organizations to acquire a Vainglory team. I believe it was SK and then G2. My history knowledge could be wrong, but they were one of the first teams to get involved in Vainglory, and seeing them not in Vainglory 8 next split would feel weird.
Yeah, it definitely would feel strange. We'll find out if that is going to come to pass as it's time to jump on into the game. Hashtag Vainglory 8. Let us know whether you're a fan of G2 or whether you want the cheese to reign supreme as Queso coming on into this game. It's time to pass it to our casters and head on into the final series of Europe.
What an incredible challenge battles we've had today, Scoundrel. Yesterday and today, who would have predicted it that two of the European Challenger Series teams have made it into the Vainglory 8, and now the previous season's European champion in G2 are fighting for Vainglory 8 survival against a group of cheese.
And G2 have pulled out something very interesting here. They pulled out the duel, but I think I'm on board with the analysts when you say you look at the compositionally and shouldn't really, if everything from Team Queso goes right, there shouldn't really be many ways that you punish this Baron, because he's got so many tools to stop that duel from getting there, so many tools to stop the Dark Potato for capitalizing on it. Keanu is going to make his way to the backline here.
He's going to... Can he steal anything?
I mean, he can. He could have done.
Okay, no, he doesn't. And so Mr. Keiko secures that. PRZ will say, hi, how you doing? Keanu will boots away, and that will be the end of that one.
I'm wondering why he didn't. If he was just going to show himself anyway. I don't know whether he was looking to get a kill, but that would have been very difficult at level 1, especially as Mr. Keiko took the jump jets. Keanu had an opportunity to land an A onto a back minion and steal it for 70 gold, denying a huge amount of experience, making the double back share kind of almost pointless. But he didn't do it. Didn't pull the trigger. That's interesting.
Do you know what I find interesting as Scoundrel is this composition drafted by Dark Potato by G2. They don't play these heroes very typically. Hundor usually very typically plays a Vox, plays an Adagio. He's actually dead, perhaps here for first blood. He is. Team Queso, PRZ, Perez able to find that one. And this is just, it's very untypical of G2. Usually, as European teams go, G2 are very consistent in what they pick, often picking the same heroes, very similar compositions, but this is something very wild from them, and it raises some question marks for me, especially against Mr. Keiko's Baron.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult to lock this Baron down through a Lyra, right bulwark, through the healing. The burst healing that can come out is pretty significant, especially in the later levels. And then you raise the question as to where G2 actually find a win. Like, does it come through Blackfeather? Well, you've got to wait till level 8 before Blackfeather becomes online as a CP Blackfeather. And then even then, you're going up against the range of the Drifting Dark Samuel, so you don't even really win the ranged war. It's going to require G2 catching Team Queso out of position, you feel, to actually find an opportunity for a win. Or they're just going to go straight up, I guess, push turrets really quickly and try and win through that way. But I don't know. I don't think the drive from G2 was that good.
And you know, we saw yesterday from Mr. Keiko a very unique Baron build against an Idris. Going down a very sustain-heavy, defense-heavy Baron build, just trying to survive in teamfights against the massive burst and assassination potential that Idris brings to the table. I'm wondering if we see something very similar from him once more. Already got that light shielding in his inventory to just try and protect himself from these Thunderstrikes Hundor's outputting. Currently a invade, in fact it's first kill, going over to Dark Potato. Completely missed it. This Samuel vulnerable to the Grace and the Blackfeather, and G2 able to execute off it.
Perez hasn't backed yet, hasn't picked up any scout traps, wasn't able to scout trap up the Tribrush, meant it was an easy invade for Keanu and Dark Potato, and they're going to start to push their advantage. Now in lane, Hundor should be able to back off this, you imagine, after he pushes the lane in. That'll give him a free back, and that should be allowing then him to pick up some items too. I would be surprised if Mr. Keiko went the full sustain build this time round, because you have so much sustain there and almost peel there already. I would say you're far better off this time round going. I mean, we could see it obviously. I just feel like in this scenario that if you are relying on Lyra to sort of bail you out of these positions, you jump jets back. You kind of want to deliver as much as you took on the very get-go. And I would maybe prefer to see the burst build come out from Mr. Keiko this time round. But again, don't rule it out. I just think you're going up against the Jewel. She's not trying to beat you in a sustain war. She's trying to burst you very quickly, and sometimes, especially for Baron, the sustain just isn't good enough to out-heal that.
We'll have to find out how this one does go. It is going to be Mr. Keiko now with the minion wave pushed on up. Dark Potato trying to steal away some of these camps, and you can see the Hundor already rotating. Hundor making sure to turn around. That's going to be Mr. Keiko jumping away from the Holy Nova. Still gets stunned. Able to secure himself a tree, and now Dark goes moving on in with those Malice and Verdicts. Look at the damage being outputted. Fountain purchased by Keanu and immediately used there to keep everyone healthy and out of risk's way. Perez picks up his own. That is a 50-second window that Team Queso can very aggressive onto G2, try and find some kills, find an advantage. And it's going to be a Treant secured though for Dark Potato.
Well, it's what Team Queso probably could have done without having to mess around with the G2 jungle, was actually go up to lane and shove it very quickly, and that gives you a massive time period where you can utilize that Drifting Dark and Malice and Verdict, punish G2 trying to defend their turret, and that could have been a good opportunity. They're starting to do it now. There's still 20 seconds that they have to do this with. I'm going to be forced back though, because I think some splash damage and Malice and Verdict did land onto G2, but it's a good opportunity. Dark Potato forced a Rose offensive backwards. Fountain up in 10 seconds though.
Yeah, 10 seconds on the Fountain. Team Queso look like they feel like they've missed that opportunity to make it, and now they have, certainly, as the Fountain is back up here. That's going to be Sorrow Blade picked up now for Mr. Keiko. Got himself a weapon and blade in his inventory. Hundor also has the gold for a Sorrow Blade, needs to go complete the item though. He's going to just Thunderstrike the turret a little bit, get a bit of chip damage down. Dark Potato with the on point can also help out with that. Just means that the next time they find themselves with a minion wave pushed up, the turret is already damaged.
Mr. Keiko going to go for that second item, likely going to be a tension bow on this Baron. That's generally where you tend to see things go. Hundor picking up a weapon blade of his own. He's probably going to go towards a tension bow too. That's the standard 1-2 items. Good to see him go down the critical strike path immediately, but tension bow just too good of an item to pass up these days. Burst that it provides just so good. I think they'll have a serious lack of damage if Mr. Keiko goes down that sustained build path. Maybe. That would be my first impression. But we did see it work out really well for them yesterday as Hundor lands a Thunder Strike onto the turret every time he gets the opportunity to. Walks up, lands it, walks away. That chip damage on the turret is starting to come out here for G2.
Yeah, and Jewel typically takes these structures very quickly. Mr. Keiko with a very early infusion. Level 5 for himself. Got another weapon blade in his inventory. Keanu Nakoa does dive in. The jump jets use defensively a bit of damage. They're going to start putting the pressure onto Keanu, who's now level 6 and has his ultimate. There's a rocket leap. Mr. Keiko knocked into a compromising position. The Oblivion, though, puts them to sleep, and Dark Potato gets annihilated. Keanu Nakoa, the Fountain, just couldn't heal through the burst. That's a kill going over to Team Queso. Now they can look for this turret once more. Rocket leap available in 4 seconds. Perhaps we see G2 go for a hero play. Just going to try and clear this minion wave, but look at Keanu Nakoa just getting bursted on down, and the turret very low as well. Malice and Verdict jump jets, and that's the turret gone. Keanu goes down as well. Mr. Keiko 2-0-1 on his Baron, and he's starting to snowball a bit of an advantage for himself. Dark Potato just walking them out of lane.
Pops an infusion as well. Dark Potato, CP Blackfeather. This is what you see on CP Blackfeathers. They don't sustain very easily, don't have it built into their kit. They are literally an on-point bot for the most part of the game. And if you don't have any defenses, you saw exactly what happened to Dark Potato in that fight. Burst out so quickly here. Mr. Keiko's actually got 4 potions in his inventory. Finishes up that tension bow as well as Hundor works towards what is likely going to be a breaking point second item. Very interesting coming out from Hundor here.
Very typical. Best Chuck. This is his dual build that we've seen be very successful in North America. Seems to be pretty standard. Then you go into the crit afterwards, and you have a huge ramp up of damage if the team fight does break out over a long period of time, Scoundrel.
But you can usually hit sort of 3 or 4 breaking point stacks off 1 Thunderstrike crit. So that's where the breaking point comes into effect, and then the next Thunderstrike hits even harder, and suddenly you ramp those stacks up very quickly.
You need to make sure he front faces that Baron damage. That's why you can pick Jewel into Baron, is that the passive hero perk means that she can tank some of that huge crit that comes from Mr. Keiko when she is facing the auto attacks. Hundor, you see as he walks away, turns to try and take each one to the face, but sometimes misses the turn just by a tick, and so makes things a little bit difficult for Hundor. Does go back at the breaking point.
Another infusion for Mr. Keiko, another 500 gold spent. Every infusion that Mr. Keiko buys isn't necessarily to dominate and win the game. It's to make him hard to teamfight against in the early game. Level 5 infusion, level 8 infusion, that makes it hard to teamfight against the Baron, as we see though on Breakout already.
Yeah, jumps straight into the fight, gets the sustain. Here comes Hundor looking for the rocket leap. Doesn't quite connect Mr. Keiko on the other side. Oblivion puts 2 to sleep. Keanu Nakoa with a Divine Invention keeps Hundor alive, but eventually he goes down. A double for Mr. Keiko. Dark Potato looking to escape, but he cannot, and it's an ace for Team Queso. Judging by the gold, I have to assume that the gold miner did go the way of G2, but that is a huge advantage to Queso.
Oh, these infusions are making Mr. Keiko, and that juke in that fight was so good, Dowsy. Juke's back forward through into the middle of the G2 team, and then rocket leaps out after Jewel had already committed, and giving him excellent positioning to then just rain those rockets down from the backline. And I was saying, by buying these infusions, he might think it's a waste of gold, but what he is doing is making or supplementing his early game, which is always classically quite weak from Baron, making it so difficult to punish him and teamfight him and try and take an advantage against him, because he has infusions every step of the way, meaning that he just hits that much harder for his level. And it's just giving him so much prowess in these fights. He's going, again, very defensive here, supplementing his weapon power with those infusions. He's going towards what is likely going to be an Aegis. He's going for a 3-item Baron once more. We might even see that Poison Shiv as the final item now, just because there aren't many other items critical strike-wise that slot in nicely. But again, a very defensive itemization choice here from Mr. Keiko, a unique way of playing Baron. And then they might just have the damage necessary.
Yeah, no, it seems like if he can dodge the initial engage from Hundor, then the sustain and the range that he gets, especially when he hits level 12 and overdrives his ultimate, just seeming to trump that of Hundor's Jewel here. Team Queso, what a story. 2 splits in a row, failing to make it to the VGL playoffs in the Challenger Series ex Scoundrel. And then Mr. Keiko, after his team Lemon and Lime find themselves in the Vainglory 8, decides to leave the roster to progress forth. Didn't want to be playing with the mouse roster, wanted to make his own way. now on Team Queso. He has been an outstanding player, supported by a great support cast of Perez and Dark Ghost, who in their own right have these moments where they just win games for their team. Team Queso...
These Oblivions from Dark Ghost have been ridiculous. You know, everybody on the Team Queso roster deserves praise. Perez has maybe looked out of shapes at times, but only very rarely. This game, he's looked fantastic. And again, Mr. Keiko is that star-studded player for the roster. And G2, again, just exactly as we said, coming into draft, you know, and the analyst said, how does G2 actually punish a Baron through all of this heal from Lyra, through the Bright Bulwark? What does this CP Blackfeather even do? It's just a tough situation for G2.
You know, CP Blackfeather with the trail, I guess, provides movement speed on his A. But of course, that means he's in the middle of a fight as a CP Blackfeather on top of the Baron. Perhaps not really where you want to be.
I mean, obviously he has got elements of use in this roster, but you just feel like they're playing two sides of a game here. It's like two sides of a coin. CP Blackfeather is supposed to play that poke at range, on point level 8, big hit, stack that broken myth stacks, and then come online and try and find the executing blows, which, you know, makes sense in a way, but then you've just left, while you're building those broken myth stacks, Jules just sitting there tanking Baron rockets, tanking Malice and Verdicts. Two sides of a coin for me, for G2.
Another gold miner disengaged here from G2 as Team Queso will meet them in the middle of the map here. Mr. Keiko with 1,500 gold. What's he going to purchase here? Is going to be a Barb Leader. We're going Poison Ship. He disengaged the fight, but they're going on to Dark Ghost. They've changed their turret priority, but they still can't find the kill. Mr. Keiko so far away, the Oblivion doesn't quite find anything. He's rooted in the Treant, escapes, and here comes Mr. Keiko. Dark Potato will lose his life. Hundor now going to fall. It's 2 kills to Team Queso, and Keanu Nakoa left running for his life. Should be able to escape, of course, Grace very fast, but a gold miner now for the side of Team Queso, and G2, even with a change of strategy, cannot find a kill.
It was the right change of strategy, you feel. I mean, Mr. Keiko already racking up huge amounts of resistances here. I think Dark Ghost's Oblivions have been the real game changers in these fights. I think G2 were making the right call here. Baron, with this build, it is threatening, but it's not the same level of threatening than a normal Baron build would be. You can afford to tank a couple of these shots. He doesn't have a breaking point. He's not going to stack up. The first hit's going to hit hard with the tension bow, but you can afford to tank some shots on Baron with this particular build. So the game plan has to be take Samuel out and then deal with Baron, I feel. And I think G2 did twig that in that last fight, but didn't quite execute properly. Also went a little bit too deep into the enemy Crystal Sentry area. But they've managed to keep the gold moderately even here, Dowsey. Only 2,000 between the teams, and it's felt like it's been a lot further than that, given how these fights have gone.
Yep, Hundor, he's been CSing fantastically, as has Dark Potato. Almost 20 CS in the lead over his counterpart, Dark Ghost. Have to wonder which you would prefer, a Scoundrel or Dark Ghost on your team, or a Dark Potato. But Team Queso, man, just disengaging and re-engaging the fights perfectly. Exactly what they need to do, and Lyra provides the ability to do that as well, with the Bright Bulwarks, the healing for the movement speed, and of course that passage.
There as well.
Yeah.
There's so many disengaged ways. G2 now looking for another fight.
Up here. This could be dangerous. Mr. Keiko splits entirely from the roster, but they just move so far back into their own jungle. Now G2 are forced to take a bit of damage from these Malice and Verdicts. Iron Cannon forces them back in. Dark Ghost does get chunked, but there's another Oblivion. That's a double, it's a triple sleep, and that's just disastrous for G2. Dark Potato trying to find Dark Ghost, will find one. A kill goes his way, but it's a double for Mr. Keiko, and Keanu trying to escape on just a sliver of HP. Perez will be able to finish this one off with the help of the Crystal Sentry. An ace for Team Queso, 11-2, and a Kraken to be taken.
Oh, and Keanu didn't. I don't know if he crucibled. He didn't crucible at the right time. It looked like it was on cooldown about the time. He had it available about the time the Oblivion went down, but a 3-man Oblivion, it's almost inexcusable for a captain to miss that. And again, Dark Ghost with the prime placement. Again, Dark Ghost with an Oblivion that turns the fight in Team Queso's favor. It was already really in Team Queso's favor, but it was the nail in the coffin for G2's chances during that fight. Yes, Mr. Keiko has been fantastic. Yes, he's been untouched. Yes, he's been a monster on this Baron, but Dark Ghost has been just unbelievable on this Samuel this game. completely shutting down G2's attempts. Dive onto that backline, and again, you're seeing the draft of this G2 roster get cracked wide open. The analysts were on board. We were on board. What were G2 thinking?
What will we see in Game 2? Regardless of the result, as Team Queso start to push down, you have to just think that G2 go back to Old Faithful. What has made them European champions, Scoundrel, in the past? What has secured them first spot so recently in the spring Vainglory 8 season? Now this turret to be sieged. Now Team Queso to look for Game 1 of this series. Another disengage, but that is the turret being chunked with those auto attacks and everyone able to charge on forward. Drifting Dark, 10 seconds. This is the engage now from G2, but they miss it, and Keanu loses his life before his teammates can join him. They're cracking down to half HP, but Team Queso is just going to look for the win. That's an engage in by Perez. That's Dark Potato trying to escape Mr. Keiko, but he cannot, and it goes down. The turret falls, and it's only Hundle left to keep this alive. Trying to take the Kraken down, trying to take Darkos down, but it's just not going to be enough. Vayne Crystal focused, and that is Hundle taken out. Team Queso take Game 1 against G2.
G2 Esports, one of the titans of the European scene, split one undisputed champions, now find themselves on the ropes, being pummeled with cheesy fists from this Team Queso roster. That was a crushing performance from them, and G2 have to shake things up in this next draft and this next game, or they are out of the VGA.
Cheesy fists, cheesy builds from Mr. Keiko. An excellent Baron performance. Man, wonder what our analysts have to say about that Team Queso win.
Nobody expects the Queso Inquisition. They are 1-0 up against G2 now with a very convincing victory there. What was it? 14-2 final score. Honestly dominant in that game. And do we think that this is a similar thing to in the first series where G2 look weak in Game 1 and then come back into it? Or is this just Queso going with their strengths?
This was just a draft issue. That's all this was. 100%. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible draft from G2. You picked triple melee into a Baron with Samuel still available. That's literally two of the biggest AoE amounts of damage you can get in the game. And they gave that over to Queso while playing a triple melee composition. It made absolutely zero sense.
Well, it certainly didn't seem to work for them in this one. And these are just some replays of, to be honest, like there's very few replays where G2 actually look good in this game, Dragonbot.
Yeah, Tasty has really nailed it. There's really not much you could have done. You put yourself in a bad position. So once you had that draft, you couldn't scoop yourself out of it. And unfortunately, I think that this is just maybe that learning experience for G2 again. You know, they realized, okay, that's not maybe a good plan.
Yeah.
There was not much they could do. And of course, they wanted to focus on that Grace first pick, but the Grace alone isn't going to help you to victory. You need to put around it things that make sense. And I actually am really impressed with Queso on this because, they got that Lyra, and then, of course, they weren't trying anything fancy. They saw obvious picks available to them, and they took it. And sometimes teams can psych themselves out of those obvious meta picks by trying to do something fancy when really the best solution is very obvious. In this case, Queso making the better decisions.
Yeah, and you mentioned during that this is like a learning experience for G2, right? But the thing is, this is a team that's been in the professional league already. They won last season. They were seed 1 from Europe going into the Unified Live Championship. And now, this can't be a meta learning experience for them. It's too late for them to have a meta learning experience. If it was Queso specific, sure. But Challenge Battles is just not the time for that.
Well, you're always learning.
Yeah, you're always learning, right?
Yeah, but this is something that you should have learned a long time ago. It's so obvious to anyone who knows this game at all that this is a bad idea in the draft. So it's, I think G2, if they come into Game 2 with a drastically different draft, don't go for this double melee. Just stick to what you know. Stick to what works. Put Dark Potato on a bruiser in the jungle, regardless of what you want, what else you have. I mean, the Black Feather from him, the CP Black Feather is so far from his normal play style, and they've tried to do this a couple times this season, and you can tell how far it's gotten them. It's gotten them to the brink of elimination from the Vainglory 8.
All right, so as we start to talk about the draft for this next game then, what is it that would be their playstyle? What is it that you want to see? Like, what's a comfort composition for G2 coming into this second game so that they can, feel like themselves coming in? Because they, if there's anything they can do right now, it's play their strengths and play their composition to get back in this series.
Put Hundor on a very hard carry, whether it's Vox, whether it's Baron, whether it's Kestrel, anything that he can hard carry with. Put Dark Potato on a bruiser in the jungle that still does good damage. Glaive, Krull, Grumpjaw, any of these decently heavy damage, but still survivable. The durability is what's key for Dark Potato in the jungle, and then just have Keanu play really any sort of captain to go along with it. Have that double sort of front line, and that's what works for G2. That's what's always worked for G2 historically with this lineup.
So now for the side of Queso, going from B side to A side, how do you go into this draft? Because you obviously, from B side to A side, you have to have quite a different mentality going in.
Absolutely, and they were kind of gifted a decent draft in that last game, so I think it's worth noting that if G2 cleans it up, there'll be some picks not available. Maybe, like for instance, Samuel, when you ultimately go for a Jewel instead. Queso is going to get that Baron first pick, though, and I like this. We saw a lot of teams do this by banning Grumpjaw away. You're forcing G2 to pick between the Baron and Grace instead of getting them both, and a lot of times we'll see like a Vox ban here, but taking the Grace away is a nice button, and Idris comes out finally.
Yeah.
We've seen this so often not make it through the bans.
And this was an instant Idris counter pick right there. They see the Baron, they go, yep, Idris 100%. Now let's consider what we actually ban away. It's going to be Arden in the end.
This is interesting because they could have banned something else and left either the Lyra or the Arden up. Now they're going to get potentially neither of Queso smart.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a tough one because this is a situation where the picks right now are a good counter pick for G2. Having this Idris goes really well into Baron, so maybe they wanted Queso to go for this Baron pick once again, feeling like they have a way to counter it this time around.
Lyra going to be locked in as well. That's certainly going to be pretty good into that Baron. You can go for those portal engages. You have the sustain to survive Baron's damage. Finn and Samuel instantly locked in. Queso coming in with a game plan here.
Yeah, very clearly having an idea of what they want to do. They have that big frontliner in the Finn to try and block some damage, and the Samuel as well will deter this hard engage onto the Baron. G2, they need something else here that is, again, they need something durable and something that can get onto the front line. I would love to see them go for a pick that we've seen a lot of teams kind of shying away from a bit. And this is a pick that they played a lot last season, the Lance. They played this more than any other hero last season. 15 games played. Most of them were Dark Potato in the jungle on this pick. I would not be opposed to them going for this again.
All right, it's certainly not something that's heavily meta right now. Dr. Dragonball, what's your diagnosis for G2 here?
Well, they're going to have a back line they have to get on, so it's super risky to go for anything that's squishy, but you do need to be careful of, they're going to go with the Black Feather because they need to get past this Finn. Once they do, they could definitely force down the Baron. Idris and Black Feather can both do that, and actually, like with the Lyra paired, you're going to be able to do a little bit of protection and heal while they're moving into the back line here, but honestly, we already saw Queso with Baron and Samuel. This is a composition they're very comfortable playing, and again, when you're given these picks that you know are successful, you're going to take them. I am really impressed with Queso, just being overall, just sticking to what they know works, not trying to do anything too crazy.
And again, it's a composition where, yes, the Black Feather and the Idris can do some poke with the chakrams and the on points, but at the end of the day, they both have to get very, very close and are going to be grouped up together. Baron and Samuel are just going to blow through them.
All right, very quickly, I want your predictions for this game. Can Queso take this to a 2-0, or are G2 going to come back into this one?
It's going to be tough. I think right now Queso has a solid draft because for G2 to win this, they're going to have to get to the back line, and they have a Lyra. That's going to help. But if they have any issues with that, or if they're not able to be successful, they're going to lose this game.
Queso 2-0. It's double melee carries into, or melee-ish, depending on how they build them. but into a Baron Samuel that's almost identical composition-wise to what they just ran. It's not going to work.
All right, so G2 potentially falling into the same hole they did in the last draft. We'll see if G2 have what it takes to stay in the Vainglory 8, win or die for this final game. Hashtag Vainglory 8. Let us know who you're supporting. But it's time to get on into this one, potentially the final game of the European Challenge Battles.
Team Queso with a composition here at Scoundrel that we would have seen so many times from G2 in the spring season. Finn, a Keanu Nakoa pick. Baron, a Hundor pick. Of course, this Samuel, we've seen Dark Ghost play it. Mr. Keiko does face check Bush and will take a bit of poke damage for himself. Perhaps not the best start to the lane. Team Queso perhaps just wanting to become the new G2.
I liked the G2 draft up until the CP Blackfeather, at which point I no longer liked the draft. I don't think Dark Potato has functioned very well on it. I also would have loved something that was either going to wholly supplement this Idris's game plan or give them some sort of abusive range in the late game, like a Scarf, for instance. Keanu's going to try and look for a steal here. I think it'll be difficult.
Yeah, he's stolen one of the back camps, so able to at least cut down some of the experience of Dark Ghost. You see Dark Potato here has moved in with level 2. Perez in a bit of trouble. I think he should be okay to escape. Hundle though roaming around. Chakram hits him. Yeah, no, he's dead. That's Dark Potato with first blood. Will go down, I think. No, survives. That is insane.
Wow, good move by G2. The early aggression comes out, already puts Queso in the back foot. And if you remember Queso's performances in the VGL Challenger Series, they're kind of known for a very good first game performance and then sometimes can taper off in the rest of the series, and often lost series 2-1 but after a thrilling opening game from them, and they kind of lost that momentum, didn't quite find that same recipe. So keep your eyes. Queso might fall sort of suspect to the things that they've fallen suspect to during the Challenger Series and struggle to sort of capitalize on their very good early game 1 win.
I have to find out, Mr. Keiko, obviously on this Baron, very likely to continue down this this Mr. Keiko copyrighted Baron build, which is that Sorrow Blade, Tension Bow, Poison Shift, basically an Idris build, which I assume Hundor will be emulating against this Baron, against this Samuel. Do you see Dark Ghost contesting for this Treant? Is able to get it. Dark Potato takes a huge chunk of damage as well. He is in trouble. Can they get a kill? Hundor's roamed down and Keanu will join him. That Chakram dissuades them from chasing too far over. Okay, cool. Currently just tied to the lane as the minion wave was pushed up into the turret.
Yeah, he's going to get shoved in quite early on here. As long as you're being aggressive with Hundor's Idris, able to just throw those Chakrams out, clear waves quite quickly. Keiko now back in lane with the heavy steel, though, should get some shove back in his favor too. Hundor yet to buy, by the way. Had the opportunity to just there, chose not to. Still on his bookie eulogies, probably going to work towards a Sorrow Blade first to get that Divergent Paths unlocked, and then maybe towards a Tension Bow or Poison Shift, depending on what the state of the game is at that point.
Yeah, Tension Bow obviously very nice as a second item into Baron, just purely because you have a lot of burst potential onto the Baron with your Divergent Paths unlocked, your Shroud Step. Becoming a Blink, you can jump immediately onto the Baron and just try and blow him up, especially when you hit level 6, which will be very soon after the Tension Bow is finished, or just around the same timings. The Poison Shiv will cut down the healing of a Drifting Dark, so it depends on who G2 are focusing in these fights. If it's Samuel, then Poison Shiv. If it's Baron, then Tension Bow. Either way, whichever one he gets first, he's going to be building the other one as his second item.
Well, he's working towards Sorrow Blade, like we said. Unlocks that Divergent Path as soon as possible is the best way and quickest way, likely, to unlock Divergent Paths, I believe. There might be some weird combination of slot inefficiency that gets you there quicker, but it's just the best slot efficient way.
2-6 sins. You might go that as well. Mr. Keiko loves doing that, especially when he does want to go Tension Bow as his second item, just so you unlock the Divergent Paths and put more pressure on in the lane. When we see Mr. Keiko's Idris, very good on Idris as well in the Challenger series.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those heroes that he has spammed quite consistently, especially in solo queue. If you look at his solo queue ratings, has played a lot of Idris recently, found a lot of success with it as well. But he's on Baron again this time round. Again, it's not, he doesn't play the late game Baron that you look at and think, this guy is going to smash me in the late game because of the critical strike, I'm going to get 2-shot. He plays a very measured, sort of sustained Baron that generates a lot of health back because of the hard-hitting basic attacks, but is not that kind of late-game carry that you think I can't get within range of because he'll probably just two-shot me. So very different style of Baron played by Mr. K-Cool compared to a lot of other Barons played at the moment. And it's a very interesting change in the playstyle because it all really revolves around not jumping to get those kills, it's jumping to reposition and play like a traditional carry. Because Baron doesn't always play like traditional carries. Baron, he goes in, gets a couple of basic attacks, seeks an opportunity to get a kill, keeps consistently rolling with that. He doesn't really play like a Vox, for instance, who kites backwards and backwards, getting basic attacks down. The build that Mr. Keiko brings to the table does something very similar to that. Your jump used to reposition out of danger more than to reposition to get a double attack onto a squishy carry.
And I wonder how Team Queso executes it without the Lyra. The Finn, of course, can be great frontline, provide a lot of defensive statistics. Dark Ghost caught out a little bit. We'll be able to walk away from danger. Shadowglass now finished for Dark Potato as well. But a Finn is able to shut down Idris if he lands a quibble, but is not necessarily going to help Mr. Cake or reposition. And Perez in a bit of trouble as he is forced under his turret, pops his boots to get there. Dark Ghost does take a chunk of damage. He has his fountain, more importantly the life spring, which allows him to regen some health here under the turret.
He's not going to back off just yet. G2 starting to put pressure on, level 7 on Dark Potato, so not yet level 8. That extended range should actually be a good tool for G2. They're going to start to push in onto this turret, but the Drifting Dart comes down and going to force some very defensive moves from G2 as Keanu soaks up those Malice and Verdicts. Good defense from Team Queso here. Don't look quite as sprightly in the early game. Kind of a little bit more tapered off.
I feel that makes sense. With the fact that they haven't found any early leads yet, they actually may lose their turret. Iron Cannon will drop onto this minion wave, but it is just going to be turret going down. Poor rotation there from Team Queso.
Yeah.
And something that actually I've criticized in the past of their macro rotations is that they sometimes just give up unnecessary leads to their opponents via macro rotation.
Well, there's very little energy on Keanu Nakura right now. And with some item spikes here, Mr. Keiko has an infusion again. Early infusion, level 6 infusion for him this time. Could be an opportunity with that Drifting Dark to put pressure onto this turret Keanu. Already taking damage here. This could be a return turret for Team Queso.
Perez able to just walk in and tank up all the damage. Make sure he goes in and polite companies. Takes that turret aggro. They forced Keanu back out. Hundor as a melee hero can throw the chakram through the wave, but kind of struggles standing in the range of his opponent's turret. May just go down here. Dark Ghost Potato now level 8, moving into range, but the turret is already gone. So Team Queso will be able to at least bite back the disadvantage. Perez may lose his life. Yep, that's Dark Potato moving in. Perez knew he was gone, didn't even pop the fountain. Unnecessary, would have been saved him.
No, absolutely knew he was dead in that situation. Had no boots to escape. He's going to upgrade his boots here. Give him an extra bit of opportunity to get out when things get rough. Mr. Keiko going for a second item Poison Shiv here over the Tension Bow, so really valuing that sustain. G2, good rotation. Knew that they'd got some man advantage on the map. Could take that gold mine for pretty much free. They've actually extended their gold lead to 2,000 now just through pure pressure across that map. Dark Potato almost at his Broken Myth, needs about 1,000 gold more. Hundor working towards that Tension Bow as a third item. Very cheap build for Idris to complete, by the way. So it makes him so powerful in a lot of aspects. He can be so effective with 3 very cheap items. Once he's finished the Sorrow Blade, Poison Shiv, and Tension Bow, he can hit so hard and so fast. Yet it has cost him so little to get there. Once he finishes that up, pretty big.
Yeah, it's just about defensives at that point for Hundor. And the Poison Ship for Mr. Keiko's second item makes a lot of sense into the Lyra and the Idris as well, just to cut down the self-healing that Idris has through his Poison Ship. And of course, Keanu Nakoa. Previous game, they were up against a Grace, and of course, Grace provides great healing on the Divine Intervention. But that healing is more of a burst rather than a sustained. It's the differences between Lyra and Grace here. Team Queso now having this minion wave pushed into their second turret. Going to be looking to defend it. Dark Ghost, though, at level 9, obviously has that extended range on the on-point. Hundor, a little bit of poke damage here, and he's a little bit separated from his team. Dives forward, though, looks for Dark Ghost. There's the Shroud Step and the Fountain late from Perez. Caught in animation of the Polite Company. That's going to be Dark Ghost going down. Mr. K-Cool aggressed on top of. He may fall as well. It's a double for Hundor as Perez pulls them all under turret, but he will forfeit ace. Hello, G2. They've woken up here at Scoundrel and they're finding the assassinations necessary.
And Idris is a perfect pick to do. This is why Idris was actually banned by Team Queso in the previous game, because they knew how good it is into these types of compositions. Poison Shiv, so easy for Idris to stick to targets, and it's very difficult to outplay an Idris too. He's got so much potential to remain untargeted. He's got the potential to blink such far distances. The ultimate makes him very difficult to lock down too. Hundor has been a massive influence in this game. Dark Potato getting a lot of work done from range and almost setting the Idris up. A couple of these on points here and there set Idris up for a potential, execution on one of the targets on Team Queso. And we talked about Team Queso having a blast performance at the start of a series and starting to taper off. They kind of don't ride that momentum wave heavily enough. Could look like it's going to be that way. G2 have got a good 6,000 gold lead here. They are looking very comfortable. They're going to take gold mine again. Starving any comeback mechanics from Team Queso right here, Darcy.
It's a huge gold lead for G2 at this point. Dark Potato got his double offensive items, and that's just Dark Ghost caught out here. He is not being able to reposition quickly enough. He's not positioning correctly. Samuel looks completely out of sorts, and that's nothing that Mr. K-Cool can do.
And
It's
this
this
is G2
Finn picking
on
Scoundrel as well. Perez on a Finn relies so heavily on his carries to just be standing behind him at all times. Can't provide repositional advantages.
Arden was banned. There was a really clever ban from G2. Arden would have been a great pick here for Team Queso. Perez plays a pretty good Arden, but he was banned. And that leaves very limited hero captain picks, because Grace, Grumpjaw, Catherine, and Arden were off the table. Lyra was prioritized. You're looking down the barrel of basically a Lance or a Finn. I might have even preferred a Lance here from Perez personally over the Finn. And also we talk about the Idris pick, Dalsy. The Lyra pick, as the denial of the Lyra pick in this Baron composition and the Samuel composition is just so huge.
And it's strange that Team Queso decided to ban the Catherine rather than the Lyra. A lot of European captains will say that Catherine's good into Baron, purely because you can charge at him and try and get that Merciless Pursuit. I do think it's perhaps very one-dimensional, the Catherine, and easily read. However, banning the Lyra, it just synergizes so well with Idris, has done so for updates on updates, Scoundrel. And, before perhaps some of these professional players started bringing it to the meta of competitive, Idris and Lyra has been a mean combination. Keanu Nako and Hundor just making it look so easy.
I remember the speed boost from Sigil also, alleviates once the Idris has used his gap closing. The healing gives that extra speed boost to him so he can lock down a target. Look at this, Team Queso locked in their own base, unable to move. You're also starting to see the drawbacks of this Baron build now. It really works when you're ahead. It really works when you're even. But when you're behind, there's no comeback mechanics with this Baron build, because you're not going to sustain, because of your attack speed being so slow, you're not going to sustain long enough against an Idris who's going to burst you down so very quickly. And there's no comeback for you to get a couple of 1-2 shots on squishy targets with this Baron build not having the critical strike built into it.
Perez attempts to pull over the wall, but Keanu Koa has the Crucible ready to go. That turret down to just a third of its life now, as Dark Potato finds that on point before the shield sets in. G2 should be able to take it on this next push. I don't see Team Queso defending it. Quibble goes forward, but great disengage from G2, and there's the turret taken by Dark Potato, making this Black Feather pick look so much better in this game. It's so surprising at Scoundrel when you consider how much praise Dark Ghost received in the previous game for his Samuel, how much question marks were put over Dark Potato's Black Feather. But you change up this captain and hero carry pick for G2. The Idris perhaps a little bit more mechanical than the Jewel, provides a lot more outplay potential.
And G2
just turn right around.
It sticks so well to the Baron as well, which is why it was banned by Team Queso previously. The Catherine ban just didn't make sense to me. Not sure why. I understand the theory, but there's just far greater threats to your composition than a Catherine, in my honest opinion. And I think, you know, if you're going to pick Baron, I always think that Idris is a necessary second ban if you're going to go through the double ban system. And then Lyra being taken away kind of just nails this Baron pick in the coffin, because Lyra is so forgiving. Lyra is such a forgiving captain. She can alleviate positional mistakes. She can correct poke damage. And she's just such a forgiving captain.
Another engage, and that's Mr. Keiko just demolished, deleted, and Dark Ghost, well, there's nothing he can do except try and run, but Dark Potato has him there and ready to go. Attack speed slow, the Atlas more just for style points. That's the ace for G2. They could just look to take this Kraken down. Going to push that wave up as well. I don't even think they need the Kraken, but Hundor's going to just solo it whilst his team pushes into the base, because two people pushing better than one, I guess. That's going to be Hundor, easily able to solo the Kraken. Idris, great sustain with the Poison Shiv.
This is a surefire way to secure the game. If you can take the turrets off the board, it's very difficult, especially with this build from Keiko, that you actually get through the Kraken regardless. They're going to take at least one turret here. It makes it very easy for them to then... Oh, they're not even going to do that. But they got the damage down, I suppose, so that's almost good, better than nothing. And it does mean that you can then push with Kraken and get... Even if you just distract Team Queso long enough, you know, Kraken can do the work for you. So it's just a sort of a safeguard move here for G2. I think Dark Potato is going to get an infusion before this fight takes place now.
Tenchibo finally finished for Mr. Keiko here. There's that infusion and Atlas as well on Keanu. Kraken will push in. It will take a bit of poke damage, a bit of chip damage here, but like you mentioned, that turret is just one hit away. Hundor will secure that with a chakram easily enough. And he does get stunned up. Turret goes down. Here's the fight. Mr. Keiko defensively jumps away. That's going to be a lot of damage onto Keanu Nakoa. Hundor locked up, but he's going to be able to get to the turret and finish the job. Hundor may lose his life here. Jumps inside Mr. Keiko. That's going to be a fountain. Hundor dead. Now they have to focus the Vein Crystal turret here. Going to be Dark Ghost going down a double. They pull in Keanu Nakoa. The Kraken is very low. It can be stopped, it seems. They will be able to take it down, keep their base alive. Team Queso with a chance to perhaps come back into this game.
G2 played that very sloppily, in my opinion. It was almost sort of desperation to finish the game. They could have played that a lot slower. The Poison Shiv did have an effect from Mr. Keiko here against the Lyra, and again, that's one of the other reasons you think about the Poison Shiv, but it's just so difficult to make that work in a Baron build. That's why a lot of people just forego it entirely, but it does work nicely against the Lyra. It does shut down the healing, because Lyra's burst healing end game, if you've got Slumbering Husk as well, which we can see Keanu doesn't, he's actually got Sigil, which essentially will do the same thing. As
Echo.
You can double Sigil, Echo, you can double Echo the Sigil. It's about, you know, combined, you know, 1,200 to heal if you just burst it with the Echo. It's about 700 to 800 late game if you have the Slumbering Husk. A lot of burst heal that you do have to pay respect to, and that's where the Poison Shiv will come in value for Mr. Keiko, but you do just worry about his damage compared to Hundor's output with the same build.
Oh, G2. With the passage, no Crystal Sentry, they are going to run into some Scout Traps, but look at where everyone is on Team Queso. Even if they get over the wall, can Team Queso stop the win? They are going to start pushing forward into the jungle. That's a huge pull in. That's everyone into that. Oblivion does get blocked up. Mr. Keiko still alive, but Dark Ghost will lose his life. Can Mr. Keiko find the damage necessary? Looking for Hundor. Will not be able to do it. 2 kills to G2. Perez will go down, and G2 with the ace find themselves a win in Game 2 here. Now, fighting for this Vainglory 8 spot, it goes to a Game 3.
They just somehow came back out of nowhere. Hundor's Idris pick, but in my eyes, more importantly, Keanu Nakoa securing the Lyra draft strategy again called into question. You had the opportunity to take Lyra off the board, but they banned the Catherine instead. I think this is going to be a really tense final game here, Dalsy.
Yeah, with Team Queso back on B side, have to wonder where this draft goes. Thankfully, we've got some people who can do the wondering for us. Let's throw it back to them.
13-3 final score. Almost a flawless game until they tried to push for the victory right there. G2 even up this series. Guys, what happened? Because if I remember correctly, you both predicted a 2-0 to Queso there. It seemed to me like the draft was very one-sided, but G2 made it look easy.
I mean, And part of it, there's multiple things that went on in this one. Part of it was Mr. Keiko's build on Baron is a very strange build. He's been using unconventional builds on the Baron throughout these challenge battles, but I just don't understand this one. Like, Baron is so good at just burst. Just jump jets, blow up a target, and this build just counterintuitive to that, as they just... It's a situation where you don't have that level of burst damage. You don't have a way to dissuade this Idris from jumping in onto your back lines. And as Xscoundrel was talking about a lot in the game, the draft too, like, they had the opportunity to ban away this Lyra. They banned away Catherine instead. And I get, Catherine is often thought to be a solid pick against a Baron, but Lyra is just... You're now playing against a healer without having one on your own team. It's just a bad situation to put yourself in.
Yeah, I mean, during those fights, it felt very difficult for Mr. K-Cool to survive at all. The entire G2 lineup could just walk over him during those skirmishes.
Yeah, and we talked about how the success for G2 in this game would be the Lyra, would be getting on top of the Baron, locking him down so he can't rocket jumps away, and that's exactly what happened. Of course, the play by G2 was solid, but they were able to get right past the Finn, like just move right past them, get to the carries, take them out, and unfortunately that's a little bit of positioning, but it also is because the success, that G2 needed was played out perfectly. They jumped in, jumped to the back line, got the victory. Very clean game. This is how we want G2 to play, or how we expect them to play, and this is now a very even series between these two teams.
Yeah, look at this, where they don't quite end the game. And this was the only time that we saw kills go the way of Queso until now. G2 obviously end out this game, finish things off. And, it's kind of a disappointing situation for Queso after how strong they looked in the first game of this series.
And this fight was unfortunate. You really don't want to force a cord the team in. Like, when you have your carries right there underneath of you, that Bright Bulwark went up right away, locked them down. They were able to then clean up this fight, clean up the game here. And G2 playing very well here so far. And with this being now going to game 3, I mean, this could go either way.
Yeah, honestly, with how the two previous games have gone, it definitely feels like a coin flip to me, considering, Queso clearly win game 1, and then the exact opposite happens in game 2. Obviously, on your screen, Hundor 8-1-4, phenomenal performance from him, and that's kind of what you expect from Hundor. He is the guy for G2. He is that hard carry, but it's time to talk about the draft. What needs to change here? Because it felt like G2 didn't really do that well in that draft, or at least that's what the conversation was. Seemed to work there. Where do you go if you're Queso right now if that doesn't work for you?
It's tough to say because, again, I do still strongly feel like the draft should have gone the way of Queso in that game. But their execution in that game, the way that they played their heroes, the way that they built their heroes, just didn't make that much sense. There was still that draft mistake of allowing the Lyra to go through instead of the Catherine, but that's a minor draft mistake that you should be able to overcome with just gameplay, and unfortunately they were unable to do so.
All right, what are your thoughts, Dragonborn? Where do you expect this one to go now that Baron is taken off the board?
Well, with him completely gone, the Grace ban, G2 have to decide now between... I think they take the Lyra here again. They've been very successful with Lyra, and it's been a good first pick for them on A side. So it's a safe pick, but it's one that makes a lot of sense. Queso now needs to think about... They had a lot of success with Samuel when you had a lot of melee heroes, but they have to be careful now because when you've got those heroes that can get to the backline fast, like Idris and Blackfeather can do, it's a little bit different. And... got to be a little wary here. I think they could take a support play, but they might end up taking the Vox. Vox has been that carry that we've seen consistently on B side when it's not taken away already, is a strong pick.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Grab that Vox and go ahead and probably ban away either the Idris or the Samuel.
Yeah, I think you definitely ban the Idris. And
so now with G2, normally I would say you'd go ahead and ban the Samuel here, but they've been banning the Arden. They've banned Arden in both of the previous 2 games, so I would kind of expect them to go ahead and take that off the board once again, and that's exactly what they're going to do. So obviously, I don't know if it's just they feel like PRZ just has an incredible Arden or what the situation there is, but G2 just does not want to go up against an Arden.
They certainly don't. They're very not big fans of that one at all. Honestly, it could be that they just feel like they don't play well into Arden. Obviously, we've seen Arden, used alongside that Scarf multiple times to take wins against G2. Maybe it's just that they really hate that composition or something.
Very well could be, but either way, this now leaves it open for Team Queso. I feel like you have to grab your captain here. You save that final pick for a hard counter. They can go for multiple options. You can take the Finn, you can take the Catherine. They can go for the Lance here. Lance is, again, something we haven't been seeing much of, but it is a pick that can have a ton of impact if played properly.
Yeah, I think G2 should definitely consider the Samuel at this point. We've seen Samuel being very effective in the first game against G2. And, you now have, Lance is great, but, he's forced to kind of get pretty far in. A missed Impale, and then a Samuel can just drop down some Malice and Verdicts. If they don't go that, though, they could go, well, the Kestrel pick makes a lot of sense as well. Ultimately, I like the Kestrel with the Samuel. It's so poke heavy. You've got a Lyra to, not really a great frontline, but definitely a great engager and healer. And this is actually a very strong composition. So I'm really kind of curious to see how Queso will follow this up.
Yeah, huge amount of damage coming out from the roster of G2 Esports, and obviously they have that sustain as well. But all three members here going to be relatively squishy if Lance can get on in there. There's the Scarf as well. Final lock-in for Queso. So how are we feeling about these two compositions? They both feel like good compositions in themselves, but how do they match up against one another?
They match up pretty well against one another. There's a big range advantage on the side of G2, aside from the Scarf, but that can be dealt with. But then on the side of Team Queso, there's only one real consistent tool to try and stop a Dragon's Breath coming through, and that is the Oblivion. Active camo traps, it's so unlikely that a Scarf is going to step on an active camo trap, especially from a weapon power Kestrel, while channeling that ultimate. So I feel like there is an edge in the jungle as long as the Scarf gets good farm and gets into the late game.
All right, how do you interpret this one, Dragmon? Do you feel like a team has an advantage here?
Well, I said that in the last game, the Lyra play would be huge to helping them win. I think that's the case here as well. And when he played well with Lyra last game, I think if he plays well this game, I actually think G2 takes this handily. The Scarf is going to go with the Dragon Breath, but a Portal can redirect that Scarf easily, can throw off the whole team and positionally, and that is something that you really want to see used. And I think G2 takes this game.
All right, we'll have to see if that is going to be the case. We have a split desk here, but it's time to jump on into this game. Hashtag Vainglory8. Let us know who you want to win the final game of the European Challenge Battles. But without further ado, it's time to get on into our final match.
One final Vainglory 8 spot available. Calamity Reborn and Salty Potatoes already securing theirs, and unfortunately for Avalanche and Reliable Union, they will be relegated. Now G2, former European champions of Spring, fighting for their survival. Team Queso hot on their heels.
This could be a challenger sweep if Team Queso play this correctly. They've got Mr. Keiko on his Vox, remember? Incredible Vox player. We've seen him mechanically be so good. Dark Ghost gives them the late game prowess of this Scarf. Yano making an aggressive move here. Not as proficient at stealing camps as the Grace is, but we'll be waiting to potentially steal things away.
There's one. Now can he get another? Dark Ghost waiting for the Spitfire more than anything, and we'll be able to secure it. Now Perez going to run into the Lyra, but the Impale will be easily dodged with a Swift Boot active.
Good enough to delay the level 2 of Dark Ghost, though. Good enough to delay that, and if Samuel can now capitalize and move forward, they're going to have that advantage in the jungle early.
Yeah, Dark Ghost almost has to just leave his jungle now. Port back at health. He has hit level 2. Dark Potato going to steal away this front camp, opting in to take away the center Treant instead of contesting the backs here. Do see Team Queso though moving into the center of the map. I think they're a little bit too late here, and actually now they're just in a bad position because they've been spotted up. Oh, almost stolen,
good.
Not quite. That will be Dark Potato securing it. Now here comes that Malice and Verdict into the goop though, and that should disengage it nicely.
Yeah, they are going to back off of that. It was a good move by Perez, did land the Impale, but not level 2, couldn't follow up with the Githian wall there. Dark Ghost wasn't able to land the goop on top of Samuel when he was impaled, which might have given him the good time to potentially land the damage necessary. Hundor slightly behind Mr. Keiko in CS, but has backed early to hit the 6 sins. Mr. Keiko with the book of eulogies, giving him nice bit of sustain in lane as well. Going to stick around to try and shove the wave in here. Not going to back as early, which could be an issue if he takes too many glimmer shots, Dalsy.
Yeah, no, you feel like that for Hundor here. He's up against Mr. Keiko, who's going to be very mobile with the Vox. Perhaps we see a build that's perhaps a little bit more reliant on auto attacks than just glimmer shots solely on the weapon-powered Kestrel, especially when Lance wants to root you and lock you up. You can't really be planting yourself on the ground for a long period of time. Well, this happens, gets rooted up, and Mr. Keiko can just dive forward and look for a lot of damage onto Hundor. Going to be pushed right under his turret.
Interesting that he chose to burn the boots there. I think I would have been reluctant to, given that I didn't think with the items that I had that I'd be picking up a kill anytime soon. Mr. Keiko's going to stick around here. Doesn't want to get any minions lost to turret. And that will delay his back timing for a little bit. That's an awkward thing to do, because delaying back timings means you lose specific item spikes. And you sort of play for one a little bit further down the line. Mr. Keiko now on 1,600 gold. Probably saying that he's going to wait around to hit that poison shiv right off the bat.
Yeah, no, he's very close to it as well. Have it in just a couple of seconds' time. That's an impale though into Kiana Nakoa. That's going to be Goop. That's knock up against the wall. Kiana Nakoa though able to escape. Dark Ghost now going to lay down some malice and verdicts into the faces of Team Queso. Keiko will take a bit of harass here, but the Protector's Contract eats up at least one of those. Team Queso in a position where Perez wants to go back to a base, purchase up. Doesn't quite have the fountain just yet. Sitting about 400 gold away from that. Mr. Keiko, though, has the poison ship, I'm pretty sure. Now he's just forced to save his turret from too much harass from these glimmer shots and malice and verdicts.
This is one of the issues that I think Queso will have run into if they weren't more careful. They are facing a very heavy siege, especially a very early siege. If they don't get the item spikes necessary to contest in a siege situation, they could just end up losing their first tier turret. I mean, Mr. Keiko being incredibly greedy with this laning phase, hasn't been punished for it totally, but has lost half HP on his turret already. If now Dark Potato rotates from his jungle to the lane, they could find an opportunity where they get a quick first turret here.
Well, Poison Shiv and another early infusion sitting in the pocket of Mr. Keiko, who's currently level 4. Dark Ghost going to move into the lane as well. Impale connects onto Kiana Nakoa, rooted up, burning alive, but once more he walks away from the damage of Team Queso. Look to backport and pick up his fountain. Will have that advantage over Perez, who has the money but hasn't made it to shop yet.
Yeah, I think Perez needs to think about that sometime soon, because a fountain will be integral into their defense and potential team fights taking place. Keiko with the infusion on level 4. A level 4 infusion, Mr. Keiko. It's all I don't know, Downsy. I could see the level 5 maybe, the level 6, yeah, but level 4, it just feels like it's not worth the money.
Feel like it would have been worth it if that first blood had came through onto Kiana Nakoa those 2 times there, but he's being a slippery little Lyra. Now has a fountain, which makes things very difficult for the side of Team Queso. Boots just providing so much mobility. Impale from Perez does not connect. He takes a lot of harass damage. There's the Oblivion. He is running. He has to pop Fountain, and he will to survive. Dark Potato does walk into a Spitfire Goop. That pushes him back. Fountain, though, for Kiana Nakoa still there, and he just heals everyone up with a Sigil. Team Case have to be so careful here. Fighting without a Fountain and against a healer. Really not something you want to be doing.
Mr. Keiko, halfway through this level 4 infusion, hasn't found a huge amount of damage with it. Wait a second.
Let's walk straight onto Kiana Nakoa. But look at this damage. Perez dives forward and just goes down for first blood. Don't fight without a fountain, guys.
Rule number 1 of Vainglory. Rule number 1 of Vainglory. Proven time and time again. Don't fight when you don't have a fountain.
And against Solyra, a healer of all things.
Yeah, they're going to give this turret up for free now, you feel, Mr. Keiko. Again, no. Ooh, goodness me. 1 shot, 1 kill? Not there, because he's not level 6. But first turret of the game gifted to G2 because of some interesting mistakes, potentially, by Team Queso there. Again, the level 4 infusion for Mr. Keiko was basically 500 gold wasted at this point. It's not like on the Baron, it kind of makes sense, because it gives you some way to alleviate a poor early game. Vox doesn't really have that same issue. Vox is all right in the early game because of his mobility. He's still a decent early game carry, especially with just picking up the Poison Shiv. An Infusion at level 4 doesn't make much sense to me.
Hasn't been able to find the impact that Mr. K-Cool wants now for the side of Team Queso. 2,000 gold behind their counterparts of G2, and G2, you know, they've been very happy to just snowball gold advantages through gold miners, through map rotations, taking objectives, whatnot. Have to wonder if Team Queso are now playing from behind for the rest of this game. Perez, level 5, is not able to block up any of these Malice and Vertex. Dark Ghost, though, doing a good job of keeping his distance. If an Impale connects onto Hundor, then eventually that is just insta-death for the side of G2. But they are going to rotate now for a gold miner. There's the Impale. There's the wait for it. Comes out. Hundor gets blown up. Here's the Dragon's Breath. They're going for the kill here. And this Samuel is losing his life. Fountain keeps Mr. Keiko alive. Huge combinations from Team Queso. 2 kills, a gold miner. That alleviates some of the pressure.
Wow, and again, almost like disrespectful positioning from G2 in that fight. Didn't feel like Team Queso were going to contest them for the gold mine because the lane was shoving in. That's a basic map pressure 101 there. Shove the lane up in lane, try and distract the enemy laner to take the lane because he might fear losing minions to the turret, and then take something like gold mine off the map because you will be uncontested. But Team Queso, against the grain, say, hey, we don't care about the lane minions. That's about 4 lane minions worth of gold there. We're going to run straight at you. And G2 had all over wonky positioning that allowed Hundor to get hit by an Impale. If a team fight takes place for G2, Hundor shouldn't even be in a position where an Impale becomes a thing. Has also got the instant invis, I believe now. Hit that threshold of weapon power required for the instant invis, but was still locked up. And the silence from Mr. Keiko to combo off the back of that Impale was so strong as well.
Man, G2 still with a gold lead, and they're now going to take this Crystal Sentry uncontested against Team Queso. Moving into the Tri-Bush, Perez is meeting them halfway. Silence goes out, but Perez gets stunned up by the active camo. They go into an Oblivion, but there's a Crucible. They're going to charge forward. That's a good route onto both carries. Perez may lose his life, but the Dragon's Breath burns alive, and an ace comes through for Team Queso. A double for Dark Ghost. They're going to secure a turret.
And in the words of Dowsey, an ASO for Team Queso means a very happy challenger team in the start of this game. They somehow turned around a really tough early game. The infusion from Mr. Keiko paying dividends this time round. Level 7 makes a little bit more sense, mate. I'm happy with that one. And he made use of it by getting that team fight off as well. Again, G2 disrespectful, I think, of their position. Like, you don't wander into an enemy jungle and take a Crystal Sentry when you are arguably even on board with an enemy team.
President used his Fountain there, I don't believe, because he went down so quickly.
Yeah.
Could have been a completely different fight. Well, not even a completely different fight. It could have just been a clean ace. A worse fight for G2, considering. Scary times if Perez is landing Impales like this.
There you go. There's where the Lance picks come into value, and Keanu needs to be able to bright bulwark those Impales. That is the ground rule, I feel. Like, you see an Impale animation, you bright bulwark it to stop him landing. That needs to happen for G2. It needs to be a thing. You let an Impale land, you've not done your job properly, but whoa, my goodness. That's
a big engage. Dark Ghost separated, but Mr. Keiko looking for Hundor. Keeps everyone back here. Keanu and Nakoa going to exit, but here comes the Dragon's Breath for silence as well. Oblivion goes out. It's blocked once more. Bit of mistrust, and Mr. Keiko loses his life. Dark Ghost turning. Doesn't trust Perez. Perez going to lose his life as well, it seems. A one-shot will connect, and he able to snipe out the sniper at the last second. Finds a return kill. Call it worth in all chat.
Good return by G2. That's dead even across the board for these two teams right now. It couldn't be any tenser at 11 minutes in. Dark Ghost finishes that Broken Myth. Suddenly those Dragon's Breath channels are going to become much, much scarier. Keanu finishes up his Atlas Pauldrons. Keiko suddenly going to become a prime target for those Atlas Pauldrons to be activated on. Has finished his Aegis already, by the way. Again, classic Keiko really prioritizes that defense early on. Goodness, I couldn't call it either way right now. The range advantage lies with G2. They had the Glimmer Shots, the Glimmer Shot build from Hundor, not got an auto-attack base build. If he had, he would have included a Tornado Trigger. Interesting that he didn't go for a Tension Bow. Went straight for the Critical Strike. But the range advantage is there for G2. They just need to be able to use it and stop the engage with the Bright Bulwark.
Mr. Keiko 200 gold away from hitting his breaking point. There's another engage. This time Mr. Keiko's the one separated from the team. He's going to have to go down this tight corridor, but he dodges out the one shot. As the engage failed by G2 though. Mr. Keiko expected them to have walked away. They haven't. Team Queso do regroup here. Fountain available and the Crucible. That's a Impale missing Perez. Huge damage onto him. Team Queso will have to walk away from this one. Perhaps G2 just turn their attention to the gold miner.
I think that's the smart decision for G2 not to push anything too crazy here. As long as they can dodge Spitfires and they're landing those Malice and Verdicts and Glimmer shots, to be able to get some decent damage done without actually having to engage the fight, which is why I'm so surprised that Keanu is trying to just jump in with the Bright Bull, with the Arcane Portal over and over again, the Arcane Passage. Doesn't, to me, strike me as an easy way to capitalize on that with the composition that G2 has. It's almost like she's going in to tank the front line while G2 do that range damage thing. We'd much prefer to see her play a passive game, and then when they find the opportunity with a couple of good Glimmer shots, use it to capitalize on an already weak target. I just don't think that G2 has the way to rush in on a target at full HP and actually get any work done.
Yeah, it reminds me of the game against Salty Potatoes with the CP Ringo. Now, it's not quite, you don't have that burst available to you, Scoundrel, like the CP Ringo and the Hellfire Brew, but the win condition was, as soon as that Hellfire Brew lands onto the Scarf, then you dive in with the with Dark Potato's Grumpjaw, and you finish him off.
You don't
Until
really
that
have
burst or at least
Grumpjaw,
some
right?
damage happens. Yeah. Perhaps you have the ability to chase though.
Yeah, I think you could chase with the Drifting Dark and the Frostburn, and Hundor can active camo into position, but that to me is far more specific. Like, you have to get a certain area of terrain where it makes an easy chase. You have to isolate one of the members. They can't be grouped up. At least with the Grumpjaw, you barreled in, you just have to get next to the target, right? A little bit more tricky for Hundor and Dark Potato to do the same thing here. Maybe they're worried that if they try and play at range, they just lose to the Scarf, which is very possible. Scarf does have a huge range on that Spitfire, probably more so than the Glimmer Shot and Drifting Dark or the Malice and Verdict when not drifting. Well, Hundor.
Wow, they've fought them out. Can they do the work? That's Mr. Keiko blown up! He goes down! This Dragon's Breath burning Hundor, but it's going to be so hard. Wow, a Spitfire connects! Dark goes chasing them into their own base. Dark Potato looking for the healing, gonna have to turn around. Impale misses. Surely they can't keep chasing. The Drifting Dark is coming up, and this could be Dark Potato looking to re-engage with it. Dark Ghost in a bit of trouble. Spitfire lands though, and Dark Ghost can't keep chasing because he would have walked into the goop. A 1-for-1 trade. Mr. Keiko instantly popped though. Could have been a different story if he hadn't walked into that active camera trap.
Yeah, needs a bit more armor on board as well if he wants to make those kind of plays. He's prioritized the Aegis, but hasn't prioritized the armor. If he had something like a coat of plates, he might have actually survived that initial engage, because Hundor doesn't have the tension bow, so he doesn't have that 12% true damage that you get from the armor pierce. Maybe working towards it now, we'll have to see, but he has also gone for his own Aegis. Everybody respecting the output of these long-ranged mage carries. This is such a close game. We wouldn't have asked for anything more between two incredible competitors in the final game of our European Challenge battles, where basically a VG8, or not even basically, a VG8 spot on the line for the winner. Team Queso versus G2. Right now, G2 have a small global gold advantage, Dalsy, and with Kraken up, game really comes into play now.
Yep, that's a infusion refresh there for Hundor. Mr. Keiko just getting himself the money into the piggy bank so that he can refresh his own, get a level 12. There it is, 500 gold in his inventory. You can assume Team Queso are going to rotate down to the shop and look to purchase that up now. Very tense this moment here at Scoundrel. And if godlike Impale from Perez wins a fight, guaranteed, we've seen it before. Mr. Keiko starting to stack up. That's a good reflex block on the Crucible. Going to start laying down the damage, a tight corridor, the Kraken being involved, but look at Dark Potato destroyed by Mr. Keiko. Hundor now trying to heal up. He is in a position to lay down fire, goes in Viz. Mr. Keiko has exited the fight. The one shot will be tanked by Perez. Now, a very squishy lineup of Team Queso up against Hundor, very low on energy. I don't think they can look to take anything for this unless they catch someone out here. Perez going to just be standing his ground. Dark Ghost heads towards his back. Mr. Keiko is already backported. Team Queso with a single kill just can't execute.
They were too low. They already used too many abilities and items to keep themselves sustained in a Kraken fight. It was just too risky, I guess, especially against Hundor on this Kestrel. He's now going for the tension bow, it looks like. just now as a last item. Very interesting. I would have thought the damage output potentially was higher by going that second, then getting the critical strike afterwards, but Hundor disagreeing. Piercing Spear comes through. Oh, it's almost too close to call right now, Dalsy.
Very
almost
close
too
indeed.
close to call.
Everyone grouped up once more. Fusion has dropped for Keanu Nakoa. Doesn't have the money just yet to refresh it. Mr. Keiko just lurking on the side. His boots available in 13 seconds. Impale from Perez misses. Will take these glimmer shots as punishment, but a Spitfire lands onto Hundor. Dark Potato moving forward. One shot won't connect. Mr. Keiko still just hiding out, ready to walk on in and try and land some damage. Resonance starts the Kraken up, but there's the silence onto Keanu Nakoa. Can they land the Impale? It's blocked just in the nick of time. Oblivion goes out. A block once more. It's Mr. Keiko almost blown up. He has to escape here. An Impale onto 2. Dark Ghost goes through the portal. That's going to be 1 kill, but it's traded back instantly. The Crystal Sentry taken by the Goop.
Goodness, I mean, how much more even can you get in these fights? You think that engage happens, the Crucible comes off at the last moment and Keanu finds it, but G2 I think are making a categorical error in these fights. They are being drawn into areas where Lance and Finn love to fight, even a Vox to an extent. Corridors. These corridors in the jungle, it makes it so easy for Perez to find Githian walls. It makes it so easy for him to aim the Impales. Keiko will get resonance bounces because the team are grouped up. Scarf and his Dragon's Breath is like breathing fire down a tunnel. It's going to hit somebody. G2 need to somehow draw the fight to the lane. Go in as a unit, push the lane, draw them away from Kraken. Lane is where you function best, G2. If you fight in the jungle, I almost fear for the Team K for the G2 lineup as we move forward in this game. Just waiting for a Bud Douse. He forgot to charge his iPad, definitely, 100%.
It was plugged in but not charging. Can you believe it?
Oh my goodness, it's all right. I've got you covered, buddy. I've got you covered because G2 and Team Queso are now lining up around this Kraken area. Keanu on the sidelines. It's so tentative, but G2 being brought into the areas that Team Queso love to fight in Spitfires. It's like bowling. You throw one down and hope to hit a pin, and the area of margin of error is much smaller. This Keanu able to dodge one out at the last moment, but G2 are reluctant to move into the central area of the Kraken pit because they know that they cannot go in and face tank an area with a lance because they're just asking for defeat here. Really defensive positioning by everybody. They're just waiting to get their backs. I wonder what they're trying to do specifically here as Team Queso brave a forward move towards the Crystal Sentry. Team Queso are happy to... You feel like Team Queso are happy to wait this one out, though. They've got a Scarf. Really, really good in the late game. They're going to start cracking up here. They are throwing down the challenge. Or at least Mr. Keiko is. Mr. Keiko seems to be throwing down the challenge. Dark Ghost and Perez are having none of it. They don't seem to want to commit. Fusions are refreshed. Keanu is going to back here. These teams just don't want to put a single foot wrong at 20 minutes into the game because it could be the end. Already a bit of damage going down onto the Kestrel here.
Man, this is exciting.
Are you back in? Are you back in?
I am back in. This is the moment. We're only 20 minutes in. It's not like we're at a 30-minute game. We had a 30-minute game earlier that just felt exactly like this. So tense, so tentative. And now for a hit shock in the making. Now, it's going to be Team Queso just trying to take over the map. Breaking point finish by Hundor. Last item. Not even the tension bow Scoundrel.
Not even the tension bow. I thought that might be because he's going for the longer team fight damage, looking to get the more damage out, the more glimmer shots he lands. Doesn't feel like he's had too much opportunity to build stacks though. No, it doesn't look like Team Queso have given him that space, but I cannot believe how tentative these teams are. Well, I can believe it. It's a VG8 spot on the line.
Yeah.
I mean, G2 right now just are so reluctant to push much further than this Tri-Brush because they know that getting into these areas is such a bad position for them to fight in. I really want to see them just go as a unit to the lane and just push the lane up. Just say, okay, bring Team Queso to the lane. Take Kraken if you will, but we'll take your base.
Next fight, it just sets the tempo on fire here as Team Queso really just trying to pull G2 into a fight. The one shot will start up the Kraken, but it's not going to take any damage. Team Queso able to walk away from it. Take a little bit of poke.
Is Keanu doing a Gabe Vizzle special? He's got a barbed needle in inventory.
Yeah, no, he has, hasn't he? Wow, okay.
For anyone that doesn't know, wait a sec, we'll talk about it afterwards. This is a big start.
Yeah, Perez does dive in, doesn't quite hit it. Gonna be the reflex block from Dark Potato, blocking that impaled. Perez down to half HP. You have to think he needs healing, and he's going to start up this tree, and I assume that will go over to Perez so he can be the frontline threat for his team. They're rooted. They're going to move forward. Mr. Keiko throws the silence out. That's going to be a root, though, on to Hundor. Hundor, can he escape the Dragon's Breath? They're charging on in, burning G2 alive, though. Perez almost dead. They take it down. Dark Ghost. It's a 2-for-1, and Dark Potato last man standing. Mr. Keiko, Perez, what can they do? They have to go back to base. With 40 seconds, can they get back to the crack and start it up?
I don't know, against the Samuel, I think it'll be risky. Mr. Keiko takes it so slow with this build because it doesn't have breaking point. You can't build breaking point stacks on a Kraken. I love the Slumbering Husk inclusion, though. You know, you don't want to get burst out by that first Glimmer shot, and that gives him time to land some damage onto Hundor. Hundor cannot afford to get impaled, Dowsey. If that was if that Hundor was not impaled in that fight, it was a different fight entirely. G2 probably walk it. They're going to see them again move to crack. I don't know whether they're going to start it. I feel like they're just baiting Samuel to check it.
Can you feel it in your heart, Scoundrel? The heart rate increasing as this game goes on. We're just casters spectating this. Imagine what is going through the minds of both Team Queso and G2 right now as Mr. Keiko looks to finish off this Crystal Sentry.
Yeah, 1 life remaining. That's important because if they take that 3rd life, if it gets that far in this game, if they take that 3rd life, the sanctuary of the G2 jungle becomes no more. That's what G2 were playing around. The previous 5 minutes, G2 were playing around the sanctuary. But he's got a poison shiv. Keanu Nakoa does have a poison shiv now. It is the Gabe, I call it the Gabe Vizzle special. I don't know whether he pioneered this, but it's the first time that I saw it in competitive play. Reduces healing onto targets, and Lyra will be the deliverer. Because they need it, I guess. They need it because of the Fountain and the Eve of Harvest and Dark Ghost. And obviously, Hundor not likely going to build that into his kit.
He's already at full build, isn't he? Perez moving forward, does decide to go backwards now. Keanu Nakoa taking a bit of damage. Mr. Keiko, just about escaped that one shot.
They're split.
There we go, they are split. Can they find it is the question. Impale onto Keanu Nakoa blocked, but the silence will not be. Silence is up the captain. Perez, though, taking a lot of damage from these Malice and Verdicts as Spitfire slows down G2's progression. Another into Keanu Nakoa. Mr. Keiko there, looking for the kill onto Samuel. The Oblivion gets blocked up. Your Dragon's Breath coming through. Keanu's dead, but so is Perez. Captain's down. Mr. Keiko taking so much damage. It's a double for Hundor. Dark Ghost last man standing stuck between a rock and a hard place. Finds the snipe, but it's going to be an ace for G2. Dark Potato minion waves pushed up. It's ace buff minions and 40 seconds on the clock.
He can't win the game, Dowsey. He cannot win the game, but he can definitely get some pressure over for G2 in terms of these structures. Oh, my bloody heart, Dowsey. I don't know if I could take many more of these fights because they have never been decisive realistically for either team. Even this fight is not a decisive win for G2. They get turrets off it, but they didn't exactly walk it. Some excellent play by Hundor at the end there and beautifully aimed glimmer shots to take out the remaining Mr. Keiko and Dark Ghost, at least do the majority of the damage to Dark Ghost. That was a 790 glimmer shot crit from Hundor at the end there, and Dark Ghost's health got tore apart. They need to find a way to play around these Dragon's Breath a bit better. I know it's difficult, hard to play around Dragon's Breath, I know, but they need to find a way to try and negate some of the effects because it is ripping the G2 roster apart. And again, they played it nicely and kited backwards, but that was so close. I don't think G2 can afford to have the fights this close, especially with the VG8 spot on the line.
Looks like Dark Ghost has the money to complete himself what I expect to be a Slumbering Husk. Have to see as they move down to the shop here, Scoundrel, or not move down to the shop. They might just walk away. That's the Slumbering Husk triggered there. Mr. Keiko taking that one shot. A lot of damage that now can be put onto this armorless Vox by these glimmer shots. G2, they start up the Kraken.
Oh, the classic G2 move. They tried to put pressure on. I don't know what this achieves. This opens up a steal, and Scarf's so good at stealing these types of things. Yes, Hundor can secure it with a glimmer shot, but I think this is so risky from G2. Why take these risks? They're going to start the fight.
Yeah, fight does come out. It looks like Team Queso won the fight. Going in, Dragon's Breath. That's going to start doing the work as he walks into the Oblivion, but he's going for Keanu Nakoa. Can't find it. Oblivion puts Perez to sleep. Mr. Keiko has to exit, but Dark Ghost going forward looking for more damage. Keanu Nakoa just keeping everyone so healthy with this Lyra. The Kraken has been disengaged. Mr. Keiko back to base once more. D2 though, going to start this Kraken up once again.
Oh, so risky. G2 don't need to take these risks. Dark Ghost just getting damage down with these Spitfires, and yes, G2 are going to back off. Is that time for Queso to start? Queso are going to turn around and say, okay, this is our Kraken now. And G2 have got very little energy on Keanu. They're split up. Is this the right opportunity?
Dark Ghost. Hundor's got the flank though. Lots of damage onto Dark Ghost. Mr. Keiko, that's going to be him having to carry this fight, or it's all over to Team Queso. He's going for the Samuel, but it's a double for Hundor. Perez, last man standing. Can this Lance escape? There's the War Treads popped. Perez pops his own and he's running for his life, but the portal forward, and surely he just dies now. The Glimmer Shot finds the kill. This Kestrel can tear through the turrets. This is looking like G2 sustaining their Vainglory 8 slot here.
And Hundor makes the miracle play to do it. It's almost reminiscent of Voldemar yesterday, the flank, taking out Dark Ghost in the backline. They're pushing for the turrets, they're pushing for the win, they're pushing for their Vainglory 8 spot retention. Heartbreak for Team Queso and relief for G2. They are the only VG8 team to make it back in, Dalsy.
And you would expect it from the former European champions to have retained their spot Scoundrel, but in this new round-robin format, they certainly had to fight for it. It's been an excellent challenge battle so far. All of these teams looking to just play for their lives. G2 will be maintaining that Vainglory 8 spots. Congratulations to them as we throw it back to our desk to bring us our thoughts.
What a series. In the end, G2 managing to take that one, but the final game as good as it could have been, right down to the wire. Heartbreak for Queso, but I'm relieved for G2. I feel like that would have been a very difficult defeat to take at the end of the day.
I mean, it's a difficult defeat for either of these teams. They're both right there, so close to finishing it off and being in the Vainglory 8. The G2 were the ones that were able to grab that brass ring in the end. And again, just an incredible series all around. Absolutely phenomenal play, really.
Yeah, phenomenal play coming out from them in the end. I mean, what was it that managed to clinch this series for them? What was it in these fights that meant G2 were able to take these edges Dragon Ball?
Well, you know, when you have a healer, it definitely helps. It gives you a little bit extra sustain, but very aggressive push here, G2 coming in, and they did a great job at actually playing around the Dragon Breath. You see here, oftentimes, very rarely did we see the side of Queso just sweep through an ace, right? Like G2 always found a way to take down, to trade evenly, and that's super important because otherwise you are going to have that Vox Scarf just absolutely tear through objectives as well. So again, even when they would lose the fight, they'd find ways to come into this. Nice job here by the Kestrel here to find it. And this is a fantastic play. He ends up going down, but to get one more Glimmer Shot off to just try to stick around as far as he could. Dark Potato is going to get the ultimate kill here. G2 they never fully lost the fight, and that was very important.
And then this last trade was just a bizarre sequence of events. You had G2 starting off an incredibly risky Kraken. They backed off of it, and then once Queso was like, okay, we backed him off, now we can start the Kraken. Like, that was just a huge mistake. It allowed G2 to get back into this fight and be able to flank around really well and find a couple of kills, and ultimately the game and the Vainglory 8 spot that goes along with it.
Yeah, and you can see during that fight, like Hundor's positioning, just trying to dart around the fight and make sure to finish off the important targets, and then take out PRZ at the end of that. And obviously the rest is history. They managed to push forward, they managed to finish off those turrets, and they managed to take the series. Hundor getting the MVP for that series. I think that final performance on Kestrel really sealed that for him, especially in that final fight, just darting around the fight, getting the damage exactly where it needed to be, and managing to take the victory for the G2. They have, like, they can now take a well-deserved sigh of relief at the end of that game, and I'm sure they're all going to be going home with smiles on their faces.
Yeah, they have to feel good. I felt like, you know, when you get a healer, you already have a slight edge. And, of course, with Grace off the table, G2 had a good composition. We talked about it. There was a lot that had to go right for them, and sometimes it didn't in those fights. It was back and forth for that reason. I think a little disappointed with, like, the overall Scarf play. We've seen Scarf, as he gets to late game, just be more aggressive and finish players off. And for some reason, Queso wasn't able to get enough damage down to finish off players. They would linger, and that lingering with Elira, very dangerous.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, that is going to wrap up our EU Challenge Battles. Let's take a look at the points. At the end of the second day, we have our 3 qualified teams now. It's not quite accurate as it stands. It was G2 that managed to vanquish Queso in the end. So it's G2 in the top 3 alongside Calamity and Salty Potatoes. So those are our 3 teams, not Queso, unfortunately. It could have been Queso. It was
Queso
close
did
to
get
being
4
Queso.
points. So that was literally just after game 2 of that series. It just hadn't been updated for game 3. But G2 ties Queso at the 4 points and overtakes them because of the win percentage and the head-to-head. So they had all of the tiebreakers if it were to go that far. So congratulations to the 3 teams. But looking forward, I mean, can we take a moment to just talk about, like, the impact this is going to have on the Vainglory 8 for this next split?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Calamity Reborn look amazing. Salty Potatoes looked inconsistent, but in their victories, phenomenal. And G2 struggling through the challenge battles, but still sticking together. And, you know, they definitely have things to work on, but this is a team that we have seen be dominant, and I'm sure if they can work at it, will be dominant once again. I mean, what are your final thoughts on the EU challenge battles before we round out the stream, Dragonborn? How are you feeling about these 3 new teams?
Oh, I'm really impressed. I think Salted Potatoes and Calamity Reborn are some of the strongest EU challengers we've probably ever seen, and challengers as a whole have really improved. The skill gap and disparity between these Vainglory 8 teams and their challenging competitors have shrunk every single season across both region. So this is great for the competitive scene. This is great for the players, and we see these power teams kind of form together here. So definitely, I'm pretty overall very happy with what I've seen here from EU.
Yeah, I think obviously going to be huge promise for Calamity Reborn, Salted Potatoes, but G2. I mean, yes, they're still in the Vainglory 8, but they have a lot of work to do if they are to return to their former glory. I mean, they were able to basically sneak in through the challenge battles. And Team Queso, unfortunately, just not quite Gouda enough.
Yeah, it was... Damn it, that was
I've been
horrendous.
saving that all day.
That was
It felt so good to get that one out.
Well, that is going to be it from us here in the EU Challenge Battles. And honestly, a small part of me is glad that there will be no more cheese jokes in the European Vainglory 8. But it is time to call it for us. We will be back on the twitch.tv/VIS League channel for the North American Challenge Battles. That'll be happening in around 15 to 20 minutes, so make sure to join us there. But from EU, we say thank you for watching, and we will see you in the Vainglory 8.